The last piece of the DNC I want to talk about, obviously, was, the lack of a Palestinian speaker. Corinda, you mentioned that early on. And actually, what a bad move I think that was, almost to this point of co-optation, right? To this point of, you want to show that even the people who don't agree with you or voted uncommitted in the primary, which, by the way, that was when Biden was a candidate, now they're on your side. In fact, they're pledged to you. There are delegates who are pledged to you. However, they would like a change on the genocide policy. And even though, the delegate, Ruah Roman, was not able to speak. She's not a delegate. She's a Georgia state legislator. She was chosen and suggested as a speaker. She has been making the rounds on like MSNBC of all places. So I just want to play a couple clips about why it really did behoove the Democrats to basically just put her up there. She was going to, anyway, we'll talk about it in a second. Here you go.
And I think one argument which seems legitimate to me is like, if a person's not going to endorse the candidate or they're going to trash the nominee, like, we're not going to give them a slot. That seems reasonable. But I think the point that I'm hearing from you is like, you were willing to go up there. I want to just read from the part of the speech that's okay with you, because you said this in the speech that you released. You said, let's commit to each other to electing Vice President Harris and defeating Donald Trump, who used my identity as a Palestinian as a slur. Let's fight for the policies long overdue, from restoring access to abortions to ensuring a living wage to demanding an end to reckless war and a ceasefire in Gaza. Did you think there was a chance that this would happen?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, Uncommitted was told that as long as they were not told no, there was a good chance this was going to happen. And so they were asked to submit names, and this has been going on for a while. This did not start, this week. These negotiations had been ongoing. And from my understanding, I was basically myself and actually Representative Abdel Nasser, who's also a Palestinian in Illinois. We were kind of pushed as, okay, you're elected officials, you're Palestinian, surely we can at least focus on the two of you out of the list of many people that were already submitted. And we were already on that list to begin with. But it was just one of those, let's focus on them. And we still don't understand why there wasn't a speaking slot for any Palestinian. To be clear, it didn't have to be me. It didn't have to be Representative Abdel Nasser. It could have been any Palestinian, and there wasn't a single one.
They could have been a family member of the 6-year-old who was murdered just, miles away in Chicago because he was Palestinian. But I did want to say, like, if they had gotten up there and said, that's why we must all work together to elect Kamala Harris, this is literally the biggest, the wing that has the biggest problem with you, and you get them on stage saying we should vote for you. I mean, if you study how movements are co-opted, that is the perfect way to do it. I mean, and I say that almost to Kamala's benefit. I say that would have actually helped, but they were so chicken shit afraid of it. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to Harris's biggest weakness as a candidate, which has been true for a very long time, which is a tendency to, I would say, over-determine policy positions, but undercook them at the same time. Like, you could see them triangulating in real time while they were trying to figure out what to do here. They did not want to let these people on the stage. They were trying to give them some sort of like laurel, or some morsel that they could then say, oh, they're the ones who are rejecting this. When the simplest thing to do is to let them speak for 4 minutes. It would be a talking, they should have figured this out earlier, but they, again, were either too cowardly or too stupid, probably a mix of both. And again, we should remember that the same people that are running this campaign are the people who were running the Biden campaign, the worst run Democratic presidential campaign. It was worse run than Clinton's 2016 campaign. It's an absolute disaster.
You mean this in 2020 or now 2024?
Yeah, the people that are running Harris's campaign were the people that were running Biden's campaign, and those people do not know what they're doing at all. I mean, they're doing rallies. They need to just do an interview. They're dumb people. They're better people who have joined since then, but they're not good at this. And you saw that here. They were so worried about potential blowback, and that they didn't want to do this. And the speech itself would have healed a lot of divisions. It would have pissed off some donors. But she's got $550 million, right? She is a cash raising machine. She can afford to upset donors. And the other thing, which I think upsets me the most about this, is that she will never have more political capital on this issue than she does right now. It only goes down from here when, it will, because people don't view her as being responsible for the Biden administration's Gaza policy, which I think is fair, right? She's not working night and day on this because she's the vice president, and vice presidents don't do anything. And so I think if she could have handed out a laurel, and that speech basically says what Harris already says, that this is a humanitarian disaster and that we should do something about it, and that Harris is better positioned to do something about it than Biden is. And my final point, and then I'll stop, just makes me mad, is that, I think that Harris's big step forward in her candidacy compared to Biden was that she sees the humanity of Palestinians in a way that Biden didn't. Right. That's not to say that she sees them as being equally human to the Israelis who were slaughtered on October 7th, but she very clearly, and has made a number of public statements that make clear that she sees the humanity of the tens of thousands of innocent civilians who've been killed. And I think that this threw that away for nothing. She got nothing out of it. She gets no credit for it. Donors aren't happy about it anyways. It doesn't make her seem more serious on the issue. It just makes her seem lost. And for me, my larger Harris take is that this is not a significantly different politician than the one we saw in 2019. She's just in a much more advantageous position. She's not a good primary candidate. She's a perfectly fine general election one. But I do think that it does raise alarms about how she'll handle divisive or complicated issues going forward.
And can I just say that I know America's not good at concentrating on more than one tragedy at a time. But I mean, I just really don't see the national press talking about, the Congo or Sudan. I mean, people are being killed in, a lot of different places, and we haven't, given them any press, any any concern, anything. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if they will. I mean, probably not, but I think. But that,
arguably,
there's.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that we can focus on more than one tragedy happening at a time, and we never seem to be able to speak on it in equal terms.
Yeah, we've been
especially if it's happening in Africa.
100%. And we've been meaning to have a guest on to speak about that specifically. But I also think that, were we giving as much military support to either of those nations, that would be different, although I know we are. But I think
in different ways.
Exactly. But I also think that you can't be a law and order candidate and tout being, a prosecutor going after lawbreakers on a national level, and then be A-okay with giving Israel everything it needs to so-called defend itself, even if it means breaking international law. It just doesn't square. It is, and she held that contradiction, and in the span of a 10-minute speech, or part of the speech. But I agree with you, Alex. It does scare me. What's great about her kind of being a blank slate and not really having very many convictions, other than basically not being an evil shitbag, which is great, is that it can be fought for, that if their pressure is on, it could potentially work. But it also scares me because it's we know who generally can exert the most pressure. That's the people with the most money. That's the people who are in the room. That's the people who have the billions of dollars and help run the campaigns. And it's we don't have access to that amount of money. So, but let's move on. Unless, Alex, you want to finish?
No, it's probably just going to be mean again. But I think that there was also an object permanence problem here, which is just to say that I think that the other thing that stood out to me was that the folks that I was talking to with positions of influence, we'll say, were not thinking about the potential of the encampments, right? And I think that they looked around and said, well, the protest movement, the protesters didn't really show up in Chicago. There were small ones, but for the most part, there was a reasonably big march on the first day of the convention, and it just kind of fizzled after that. I think they were looking around and saying, well, there's not that many protests right now. And you're like, well, that's because it's summer,
right.
Children, the kids, the college students are at home.
People are around. I mean, are gone. Yeah.
So, I think that what this looks like in a month, I don't know, but I think that they're living in the present right now. And, unfortunately for them, the election doesn't take place in the present. It takes place, in 2 months, and that'll be in the middle of a semester, and we could be smack dab in the middle of another another sort of news cycle like the one that was in April and May, and they're not thinking about this at all.
I hope they have a better line than defending the right to call salads an Israeli salad or whatever the fuck they're gonna say. Whoever they're gonna defend.
I have hope that there's some new blood in Kamala's campaign, and I think that I've seen signs that this is going to be differently ran than Biden's campaign. So we'll see.
Yeah, I should say I've been cruel, I think, in some ways, but I do think that there have been a bunch of additions. So they've added essentially a layer above the Biden folks who are there, and I think rubber roomed several of the other people. And the people that have been brought in are generally much, much better. So.
That's great. No, that's good. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.